Hi guys, and welcome back to Sheddy's Kitchen. I'm Sheddy. Today we're looking at making a lamb curry dish. This dish is a really lovely hearty meal for these winter nights, and it goes very well with my chapatti recipe and also my paratha recipe. It's also very low in calories as well. So are you ready? Let's get cooking. You'll need 1 kilogram of lamb leg. Now make sure that that's washed and that's drained properly. It needs to be nice and dry. 300 grams of chopped onions. 1.5 teaspoons of red chili powder. Half a teaspoon of turmeric powder, that's known as haldi. One and a half teaspoon of cooking salt. One teaspoon of crushed ginger. One and a half teaspoon of crushed garlic. Two medium-sized tomatoes that have been chopped. One teaspoon of crushed green chilies. Now this, to make an equivalent of 1 teaspoon, you probably need about 4 medium-sized chilies. Now in regards to the water in total for this recipe, you require 2.5 litres. Initially at the start we're going to use 1 litre, and then we'll need 1.5 litres later on towards the end. $250 ml of sunflower oil. One and a half teaspoons of dry coriander powder. Three teaspoons of plain yogurt. One teaspoon of jeera, which is a cumin powder. And lastly, you'll need 25 grams of fresh chopped coriander. So we're going to start with popping the kilogram of lamb into the pan directly, and you need that on a high heat. So we'll just get the heat up on that. There we go. And to that you need to add the onions. And we're going to put that in there and just leave that heating up for probably a few minutes really. We want the onions just softening and mixing, so just give that a good mix. And we'll leave that in there to heat up for about 2 minutes or so. We've made sure that the lamb was nice and dry when it went into there. We will be adding water later on. There you go, give it a nice little mix. And we'll let that soften down. Now this is quite a relatively straightforward dish to make, and the good thing with it is we do put a lot of ingredients in one go into there. So if you want a lovely meal that it's a bit like stew really, but this lamb curry is really nice, perfect for them winter nights. So it's quite efficient to make. I've made a similar dish to this before, and that's the scouse. And the scouse is a very similar concept. That's very famous in Liverpool. It's a traditional dish that you would have there. So when you make a scouse, very similar concept where you would put everything in and then you leave it on a boil to let it stew over really with the meat, and it's lovely. Okay, it's actually been about 3 minutes or so now, and the important thing here is the meat is actually letting go of quite a lot of water. You want that to happen. The onions are still softening, but you can see there's a fair bit of water. You should be able to see that water there. You want that water to be released, and the onions are still softening. So it has been about, I would say about 4 minutes or so now. We're going to give it a bit less than a minute before we add the rest of the ingredients in. Okay, time to add the next part of the ingredients. What we need to do is add the 1.5 teaspoons of the red chili powder in. We'll do that now. Half a teaspoon of turmeric powder, which is the healthy. Always use a separate spoon for that. It stains really badly. You don't want to get that on your clothes. It's very difficult to get off. 1.5 teaspoons of your cooking salt. 1 teaspoon of your crushed ginger. Got a tiny bit more in there. 1.5 teaspoon of your crushed garlic. Now you can get the crushed ginger and the crushed garlic you can actually get in jars already, so if you don't want to crush them or make them fresh, you can actually buy them in little jars from most supermarkets. You want to add your 2 medium-sized chopped tomatoes. You want a teaspoon of your crushed green chilies, which we got over here. That's about 4 green chilies. If you cook them, you'll make about a teaspoon full. So that's what we're adding into there. You don't want it too chilly for yourself. Add less. And I'm going to give that a real good mix now before I add a litre of water. I'll add the 1 litre of water. Remember, there'll be 2.5 litres in total. We're adding 1 litre first though. So add that in there, drop that onto a medium heat. I'd put a lid on that and leave that for about 15 minutes. But very important to remember over here, what you do need to do is, even though you've left it for 15 minutes, I would come back to it every 5 minutes or so and give it a quick stir, then put the lid back on again. Add the water to that now directly. I'm going to drop that to a medium heat. And I'll just pop a lid on that now. And I will be coming back to it to give it a stir. Make sure you do as well. Give it a little stir in between. And we'll leave that on there for approximately 15 minutes before coming back to it. So it's been 15 minutes. We've come to it 5 minutes ago, give it a bit of a mix and just check where we're up to at this moment. I'm just going to take the lid off to show you, and as you can see, there is still a fair bit of water in there, which means we're going to have to leave it longer. So what you need to do is make sure the water is reduced down as far as possible. You don't want it completely dry, but you don't want this much moisture in there as well. So I'm going to leave that. The onions are really soft in there now, actually softening really well, but we want to get rid of as much water as we can. What I'll also suggest at this point is, because we will be adding 1.5 litres of water in later on, is a good thing to do at this point is I would either use a kettle or a pan and boil 1.5 litres of water out of the way, because it just speeds up the process of cooking. So I'll pop the lid back onto there now, and we'll leave that a bit longer for that to reduce down. So it's been well over half an hour now, so I mean, originally we said 15 minutes, but it does depend on the meat that you actually buy. This was obviously a lot tougher, so it's taken a lot longer for this to start breaking down. I'll just take the lid off to show you, and the water's gone quite far down now. It's lovely, it looks like a lovely soup over there, but you need to make sure that the meat itself, it actually breaks really easily, or it comes away from the bone. And the way to test that very quickly is, all you need to do is, I'll grab one without a bone just to show you over here. Easiest way to do it is to get a tiny bit of cold water, because you don't want to burn your hand on this. Pop a tiny bit of cold water over it like that, make it nice and cool for yourself, and then use your fingers to see if they break. And you can see that actually breaks really easily there. You can see how that's broke away. That means that meat's actually still a tiny bit tough, but it does break away well. We'll be stewing that for longer anyway. So I'm going to pop that back into there, and at this point we need to add the oil that we had before, and I'm just going to pop the heat onto a high heat now. That's quite important to do. I'll pop that onto a higher heat, and the oil's now in there. We now need to just keep giving that a mix. You have to keep giving that a mix, because there's still water in that pan, and that water needs to evaporate off. So I'm going to keep doing that. I'll keep an eye on that. If you find that the water's running quite far down and it's sticking, do what we normally do, add a tiny bit, splash of water in there at a time, so that will evaporate off anyway. So we're just going to leave that to do that now for a bit. So it's been about 15 minutes now. You can see most of the water has actually gone down. We're going to leave it a bit longer to go down before we add anything else. If it does get too far down on it, find out if the meat's actually sticking to the bottom of the pan, or part of the onions that are in there are sticking to the bottom of the pan, add a splash of water. I'll probably be doing that as well, but they have a tendency to do that when we add the next ingredient in. So I'll just give that a minute more, and then I will add in the dry coriander powder. Okay, so I'm going to add 1.5 teaspoons of the dry coriander powder into that now and give that a real good mix. Now when you add this, it can cause the mixture to become quite dry very quickly, so keep an eye on that and make sure you're adding water if you see it sticking. We're going to mix that for approximately 2 minutes before we add anything else. Add a little dash of water to that. Right, so this is the water's pretty much reduced completely down now, as you can see. Good indicator there, you can see the meat as well has gone completely away from the bone on some of the pieces. Only got bubbling off the oil now. So at this point over here, we're going to add 3 teaspoons of plain yogurt. And the plain yogurt is quite good in this recipe because it gives it that slight sharpness in the curry as well that you need. Especially for lamb one, a lot of restaurants will do this. We'll pop 3 teaspoons into there. Give that a real mix for about 2-3 minutes before we add the water that we have been boiling. I'm going to add the water in now. I did boil 1.5 litres, but I'm probably at this point over here just making a judgment, and I'll probably do a bit less than 1.5 litres. So I'll pop in about 1 litre of that boiled water, which I'll put straight in to the pan. And you need to leave that on a high heat. Make sure you leave the lid off and allow that to boil away for a bit. We need that water level to go down. Want that water to boil off. And then when we have reduced it down further, I will drop it onto a medium heat and I will pop a lid on and leave that to continue reducing down. So there you go, just give it a good mix and we'll leave that on the high heat to boil away for a bit. Right, so most of the water is reduced down now, that's gone down quite a bit. What I'm going to do at this point over here is I'm going to pop a lid on there, drop it to a medium heat and leave that heating for about 3 more minutes before completely turning off the heat. So we're going to leave that for 3 minutes now on a medium heat, then we'll come back to it and we'll switch that off. Okay, so that's been heating now for 3 minutes. I'm just going to switch off and take that off heat. And one final part to do over here is add the final 2 ingredients. We've got the dry cumin powder and we've got the fresh coriander. So I'll just take that off. I'll pop in there 1 teaspoon of the dry cumin powder, which is the jeera. Give that a really nice mix in there. I'll add half the amount, about 12 grams or so, it's just approximation, of the fresh coriander. I'll give that a mix. I'm going to add the rest of this to the dish at the top just to make it look nice later on once I've actually plated it. So just pop that into there and give that a mix in as well. Just got a bit on my hands. Okay. And that is now ready. This looks and smells divine. Time to get the seal of approval. Let's go. Seal of approval met. Now, if you want to follow any more of my recipes, please like and subscribe to my channel and click that notification bell as well. And if you're celebrating Christmas, have a very Merry Christmas. See you soon.